and welcome back, Geotech Masters. I'm thrilled to have you join us for another crucial episode in our standard penetration test tutorial series. In our last video, we walked through the initial steps of the SPT procedure, from preparing the borehole to setting up the equipment. We learned about advancing the borehole incrementally, ensuring it's clean and stable, maintaining fluid levels, and the importance of attaching the sampler and hammer assembly correctly. We also highlighted how crucial it is to properly mark the drill rods for observation or use automated systems. Today, we are moving into the heart of the SPT, driving the sampler and determining that all-important N value.
You might be wondering, how exactly do we apply the hammer blows? What are the specific rules for stopping the test? What if the soil is incredibly soft or unexpectedly hard? And most importantly, how do we calculate the SPT N value that engineers rely on so heavily for design? We'll answer all these questions and more, giving you the practical knowledge you need to master this fundamental test. So, let's get started and truly understand how we get the N value. Once your borehole is prepared, the split barrel sampler is attached to the sampling rods and lowered to the bottom of the borehole without dropping it onto the soil. The anvil and hammer assembly are then attached to the top of the drill rods, and the dead weight of the sampler, rods, anvil, and hammer rests on the bottom of the borehole. After confirming the sampling start depth matches the cleanout depth and checking for excessive cuttings, it's time to begin driving the sampler. This is done by applying blows from the 63.5 kg hammer, following the operating procedures we discussed in our video on hammer systems. Remember, the goal is to drive the sampler into the soil, recording the number of blows needed for specific penetration increments. As the sampler advances, you must count the number of blows for each successive 0.15 m increment.